How does the Isolani influence pawn chains? Have you ever wondered how an isolated pawn can shape the entire game of chess? Let's break down the role of the Isolani, also known as the isolated queen's pawn, in influencing pawn chains. The Isolani is a pawn located on the d-file with no friendly pawns on the c or e files. This unique position means it stands alone, never part of a traditional pawn chain where pawns support each other diagonally. Because the Isolani has no adjacent pawns, it cannot be defended by them. This makes it a potential weakness, especially as the game progresses into the endgame when fewer pieces are on the board. The square directly in front of the Isolani often becomes a prime outpost for the opponent's pieces, particularly knights. These knights can put pressure on the Isolani and the surrounding squares, creating challenges for the player who holds it. However, the Isolani is not just a target, it also influences the game in beneficial ways. The c and e files next to the Isolani are usually open or half-open, allowing rooks and the queen to become more active. This absence of pawns on these files also gives the player's bishops greater mobility, which can be crucial for launching attacks, especially on the king side. In practical terms, the Isolani creates an imbalance in the pawn structure. While it is a target for attack due to its isolation, it also opens up dynamic possibilities. The player with the Isolani can enjoy increased piece activity and chances for a kingside offensive. This means that while defending the Isolani is important, the player must also take advantage of the open lines and the activity it provides. In summary, the Isolani disrupts the typical pawn chain structure by standing alone without adjacent pawn support. This isolation can be a weakness, but it also creates opportunities for active piece play. Understanding this dual nature is key to effectively navigating positions with an Isolani.